We thank God for all of his many, many blessings that he had given to us. I'd like to welcome you to our Sunday school summary. We pray and hope that God has brought you safely to another week and he has smiled on you. And as his smile continues to smile on you, we pray that all is well. And we pray that as we continue to go through this pandemic, we know that God is still in control. We know that He told us to seek Him. As we seek Him, and we will find Him. And as we find Him, we will obey what He has told us to do. And we just thank God for you all, and we pray that all is well. Today, in our new lesson study, we're still dealing with Elijah. Elijah was a unique man. He was a praying man. He was a faithful man, and he was an obedient man. He did what God told him to do. As he told him to do it, he was faithful and he served even when it didn't make sense. He served and he trusted in what God's saying. Now that's some food for thought for us. When God tells us to do something, we must obey him even when it doesn't make sense to us. We still need to obey what he has said. And because he has said it, it means that we must be obedient to that what he said. We saw last week where he made a bold proclamation to the king, King Ahab. He said, unless I call for it, it's not going to rain for the next 3.5 years. And then he told him to get away. So now this is a continuation of that. And what has happened is we want to look at the topic of serve with trust. Serve with trust. We must serve even sometimes it does not make sense to us. We still need to serve and do what God has called on us to do. The point, service to God should be fueled by trust in him, no matter what. Whatever he says, don't care how far-fetched it is our obligation to obey and do what he said do. And this lesson that comes to us from 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 7 through 16. So as we look at it again, we're looking at a continuation of the study from last week. Now we got three outlines. The first outline comes to us from 1 Kings 17, 7 through 12. I need you to listen carefully because you're going to see how quite a bit of this stuff does not make sense, but we still have to obey what God has told us to do. Verse 7. After a while, the Wadi, the brook, dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Get up and go to Zarephath that belonged to Sidon and stay there. Look, I have commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there. So Elijah got up and went to Zarephath. When he arrived at the city gate, there was a widow gathering wood. Elijah called her and said, please bring me a little water in a cup and let me drink. So she went and got it to get it. He called to her and said, please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. But she said, as the Lord your God lives, I do not have anything baked, only a handful of flour in the jar and a bit of oil in the jug. Just now, I'm gathering a couple of sticks in order to go prepare it for myself and my son so we can eat it and die. So follow God's directions even when it doesn't make sense. Okay. First of all, last week we saw where he had made the proclamation. Now, a time had gone by, period of time had gone by, and the brook, what I call Wadey, the brook Cherith had dried up. And why did it dry? Because there was no rain. There was no rain or dew. So because of that, we see it. And then first obedience was Elijah. He obeyed and did what God told him to do. He told him to get up and go to Zarephath, and it belonged to Sidon. And he also told him that, look, I have a widow that is going to take care of you. A widow. She's going to take care of you. See, widows were bad then. They didn't hardly have any voice. But God supplied him with a widow. Like last week, he supplied him with the ravens. This week, he's supplying him with a widow. And widows are low man on the totem pole. And she's going to provide for him. And as soon as he got into the gate, he saw the widow. And what she was doing, she was picking up some sticks to build a fire. And the fire was to cook the bread that he had. But now he asked her to provide him with some water. But as she was going, he also said, give me a piece of bread. Some translations said morsel of bread, a piece of bread. But then she said that, look, I don't have no bread. This translation said, I don't have no baked bread. The only thing I have is a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. And I'm getting ready to fix this for me and my son that we may eat it and die. And but she went on and did what Elijah told her. Trust, serve and trust. She went on, Elijah was serving God, and she was serving Elijah, doing what Elijah told her to do. And so she did that. And as she did it, here are some lasting truths about this topic. First lasting truth is that God's power is never limited by time, space, or geography. Standing in the enemy's camp often provide opportunities for greater faith. God cares deeply about all people, regardless of their background or social status. God has no problem using seemingly unremarkable people to fulfill his remarkable mission. So again, that widow, the widow back then was the poorest thing that they had. And God provided her he gave her the provision to provide for his prophet. The second outline, First Kings 17, 13, and 14. You see, we're going to build on what he said. Then Elijah said to her, do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a small loaf and from it and bring it out to me. Afterwards, you make some for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord of God of Israel said, the flour jar will not become empty, and the oil jug will not run dry until the day that the Lord sends rain on the surface of the earth. So, encourage others to join you in trusting God. Elijah told her, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do what you are going to do. But first, make me a small loaf. Cook me some first. Cook me a piece first. Cook, but she didn't have nothing but some flour and some oil. So she didn't have nothing to cook. So he said for her to cook him some first and bring it to her. And then he made a promise to her. He made a promise to her. The flour in your jar will not be empty, nor will the oil in uh, your jug will not run dry until it rains. The Lord send rains on the earth. So we got to obey God again. It doesn't make sense, but she obeyed and did what Elijah told her to do. Elijah told her to make him some bread, and then she went on and did it. And so we got to show that same type confidence in what God tells us to do. Lasting truths from 13 to 14. We should use what we have learned about trusting God to encourage others to trust Him as well. While fears are real, faith in God allows us to move forward and fulfill His plan for our lives. God blesses the one who will trust His leadership even when it doesn't make sense. That's what happened. So we got to remember that and keep that in mind as we do this. The next outline, 15 through 16. So she proceeded to do according to the word of Elijah. Then the woman, Elijah, and her household ate for many days. The flour jug did not become empty, and the oil jug did not run dry, according to the word of the Lord he had spoken through Elijah. So the promise, God is faithful. He will do what he said he was going to do. As she went on and obeyed God, he said, did what Elijah said. The woman and her household never starved. They ate, the Bible said, many days. And the flour jar, I'm sorry, I call it a jug. The flour jar never became empty, and the oil jug never ran dry. That is because that's what God said it was going to do. So we got to serve God and trust Him. We got to serve Him and trust Him because He said it. Even when it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I keep on saying that because God would tell us to do some things that, in our way of thinking, we think that God is always right. But no, He want us to do. He want us to trust Him and do what He says do. And when we do what He said do, blessings are going to come. Even as it was in that day, it's the same way today. All we need to do is trust Him and do what He said. Trust or obey what He said do. Again, it may not make sense to you, but do what He said do. Here are some lasting truths from verse 4, 15 and 16. God blesses those who trust Him and live in obedience to what He say. Yeah. When we obey, He blesses them. God may not give us everything we want, but He will never leave us lacking for what we need. That's right. He won't. Trust and obey. That's what we need to do. Trust and obey. And finally, when we put our trust in something other than God, we will always end up disappointed. So serve and trust the Lord with all your heart. May God richly bless you. My beloved.